Live at noon. CBS 47 Action News Jax starts right now.
A newly unsealed indictment detailed a national marriage fraud scheme with ties to Jacksonville and the U.S. Navy. This is Action News Jax at noon. I'm Chandler Morgan. Action News Jax Zion Decoto is live outside of federal court in downtown Jacksonville. Zion, you learned that there's also an international component to this?
Yes, Chandler, this case involves Chinese nationals paying U.S. citizens, specifically service members, to marry them so that they could evade immigration laws and become permanent residents. Some of the U.S. citizens involved in this case are U.S. Navy members. The scheme played out all over the country, including here in Jacksonville. The government says the goal of some of the marriages was simply to gain citizenship. For others, it was allegedly so the Chinese national could get a CAC card or common access card. The card is helpful in gaining permanent residency status, but according to officials, they are suspicious of the Chinese nationals' motives for wanting those CAC cards, because of another key privilege that it grants to military spouses.
But in this instance, it gives you access to military facilities, not only here in Jacksonville and not only throughout the United States, but throughout the world.
Now, coming up later on Action News Jax, we'll tell you about the extensive lengths the co-conspirators went to make the marriages seem legitimate. We will also tell you about a U.S. service member who pleaded guilty to bribing an official for Department of Defense access cards. For local coverage you can count on live in downtown Jacksonville, I'm Zion Decoto, Action News Jax.
The U.S. Attorney's Office announced a national marriage fraud scheme with ties to Jacksonville and the U.S. Navy. Action News Jax Zion Decoto tells us that there's an international component to this case.
This case involves Chinese nationals paying U.S. citizens, some of which were Navy service members, to marry them so they could evade U.S. immigration laws and become permanent residents. Federal prosecutors say the recruited U.S. citizens involved would be paid thousands in cash installments for marrying the Chinese nationals when the immigration status was obtained, and then for divorcing their sham spouses afterwards. The government says the goal of some marriages was simply to gain citizenship. For others, federal prosecutors say it was so the Chinese national spouse could gain a common access card. The card eases the path to permanent residency, but there's another key privilege.
But in this instance, it gives you access to military facilities, not only here in Jacksonville and not only throughout the United States, but throughout the world.
Exactly why the Chinese nationals wanted base access? Officials say they're still investigating, especially to determine if they worked for the Chinese government. Civilian spouses often use base entry for privileges like food and laundry. The U.S. attorney says the conspirators went to extensive lengths to look like couples.
Not only did they go through the processes of engaging these marriages, but they took photographs of marriage ceremonies, of celebrations of the marriage themselves, so these individuals could produce them to immigration services.
A mix of service members, Chinese nationals, and Americans were charged. Overall, 11 men and women were indicted on marriage fraud conspiracy charges. Among the defendants in this case, Navy reservist Raymond Zumba pleaded guilty after being caught in a sting operation. Last January, the Department of Justice says he bribed a couple that worked at NAS Jacksonville with $3,500 for real but unauthorized Department of Defense ID cards. They say Zumba himself was paid $10,000 for marrying a Chinese national, even serving as a matchmaker for other sham couples, including Navy members. For local coverage you can count on in downtown Jacksonville, Zion Decoto, Action News Jax.